I have been enjoying Greek mythology and really mythology in general, Roman, Norse, Egyptian, ever since I read the Percy Jackson books all those years ago. That really got me into a state of enjoying different mythologies, what they represent, different power structures. And of course, that's a very kid friendly, centered way to get into the world of Greek mythology. Since then, having read the Iliad, the Odyssey, and one of my favorites that I've read, just in terms of really getting into the lore and the stories contained within Greek mythology, was Mythos by Stephen Fry. If you have a passing interest in Greek mythology, if you have any desire to learn more about that world, I highly recommend checking out Mythos by Stephen Fry. That is a really good book, tells all the stories, gives you all the characters, really good stuff. So, with my enjoyment of Greek mythology and all of these stories, I was very excited when at the book club we decided that we were going to read Circe by Madeline Miller. This was just a really fascinating book to read through. I think that you can read through it as someone who knows a lot about Greek mythology or someone who knows the bare minimum, right? If you just know, like, Zeus, Poseidon, Athena, I think that you'll be able to get the gist of everything. I think that Madeline does a phenomenal job of making sure that you are informed about who all these characters are, explaining the events in such a way that it never feels like a lore dump or like you're being lectured about anything. It just feels like a very natural flow to give you all the information that you need on all these characters. And the whole story is told through the perspective of the titular character, Circe, told in this first person perspective of this character. If you don't know who Circe is, or if you just need a refresher on who she is, the book gives you enough of that information. But if you don't know and just want a refresher right now, Circe is essentially the daughter of the Titan Helios, who is the character in Greek mythology who rides a chariot and carries the sun across the sky. And Circe is probably most known for her part in Homer's Odyssey, in which, on the way back from Troy to Ithaca, Odysseus and his men get stranded on the island of Aiaia, I believe it is pronounced, where they encounter the witch Circe, who transforms Odysseus's men into pigs. She's a witch, specializes in transformation, and that's kind of what she's most known for. But she does take part in several other stories within Greek mythology. That's just the most well-known one, since the Odyssey is probably one of the most well-known Greek stories. Throughout this story, we get to see several key events that happen in Greek mythology that Circe was present for, but we get to see everything happening from her perspective, which is a really cool way, I think, to tell these stories. It keeps it fresh. Even as someone who knows these stories and kind of know what's going to happen in each little arc that happens throughout the book, it still keeps things fresh because it's never quite been told like this before. It's never been told in a way where it is just from this one character's first-person perspective, especially a character that we know of and now we're getting in the mind of. And it's really cool to see that happen, especially with a character like Circe, who in the actual Greek stories generally unexplored for the most part. The book, of course, starts with Circe's early life. You get an idea of her family structure, her relationship to her father Helios, her relationship to her three siblings, and we learn very early on that she, despite being a goddess herself, was born without any divine powers. And there is even an aspect in this where she has what was referred to as a mortal's voice, because the gods themselves have voices that fill a room. They're boomy, they're powerful, they command authority. Meanwhile, Circe has a voice that is just that of mortals. They're softer, they're weaker, they don't have as much command to them. Due to this lack of power that she has, she is harshly looked down upon by her own family and just other gods in general. And that to me leads into one of the core themes that I noticed throughout this book, and that is the themes of power. Circe, being a character that was born without power, is instead born with the ability to utilize witchcraft. And witchcraft, being much different from godly, divine powers, it's something you need to work towards. It is a craft that you hone through dedication, study, and work. It is not something that you're just capable of doing. And the other gods look down on that as a weakness. Due to her own lack of power, her family essentially hates her. They just want nothing to do with her. They want to be rid of her as soon as possible. There's even a part in the book where Helios says directly to her, "You are the worst of my children." And harsh, but that speaks to how fixated the gods are on power because they are born into it. They are born with authority and the power to command the world. While Circe was born with none of that, so they don't even register as something to worry about or acknowledge the existence of. And it shows how power can transform people. There is a god called Glaukos, who was actually a mortal, who Circe, via witchcraft, was able to transform into a god. And Glaukos went from being this very kind, caring soul and very rapidly turned into an unfeeling monster once he got the power that he wanted. Not even wanted necessarily, it was just power that he never dreamed possible. Now he can command waves, he can control the tides, and he can gift islands a bountiful harvest of fish. And he lets all that go to his head, and he just becomes an egocentric monster because he's never held this kind of power before. And it also showcases to me what I think Madeline might be trying to say in terms of power is how one acquires power can determine how responsible they might be with it. In the case of Glaukos, he was just given it. And the gods themselves are just given power. They're just born into it. They're born powerful. They are built different. Circe, born powerless, but is able to acquire power through dedicated work and effort. And in so doing, she appreciates what she's able to do so much more. She is able to actually respect her craft. She is able to recognize what she is capable of and use it to the best of her ability because she understands what her power is and what it was once like to be powerless. And I think that it had a really fascinating thing to say about Odysseus, because we do get to see Odysseus throughout the story, because again, it's basically all the things that Circe is involved in. Odysseus was a character who, not even necessarily the most powerful, you could say that anyone could fall into the traps that Odysseus fell into, and that is the trappings of untempered ambition, the quest for power, the quest for glory, the quest to be Greek's greatest, wanting to be the best at any cost. And that ambition, that drive to be known, ends up being his ultimate downfall. I think that it is almost saying that a life where you are so fixated on what people will think of you after you have passed, and that way you're almost living as if you're already dead. Because you're not living your life, you are building a legacy to be remembered by. I might be misinterpreting that, but that's kind of how I read that too a little bit. But what I think is also a really fascinating aspect of this book, and another theme that really hit me, was the themes of transformation. As mentioned, Circe has a gift in witchcraft for transforming things. She's just naturally talented when it comes to transforming things in regards to witchcraft. And I think that transformation being that theme is really important for a character whose primary ability is transformation. We see her go from this scared girl into a confident, self-assured woman throughout the story, and each section she gains a new perspective. She learns something more about the world and takes that in and uses that to grow. Any pains or sorrows that she goes by, she allows to transform her into something stronger. At the beginning of the book, she's living with this family that clearly doesn't like her. due to her lack of power, and that makes her self-conscious. It makes her anxious. It makes her fearful. Eventually, she becomes exiled to the island of Aiea due to practicing witchcraft, because the gods do not like witchcraft because it is something that requires effort, and the gods detest effort. So she gets banished to Aiea, and for the longest time, bad things just keep happening. For a while, you almost think that things are going to turn up for her because she's finally away from this family that she never really enjoyed being with and who never really enjoyed her company. So you might think for a while, it's like, the exile is a punishment, but in a way, it's also kind of a gift because I don't have to be around you anymore. But bad things keep happening to her while she is in exile until she starts gaining more confidence and assuredness in herself. That's whenever events start going more in her way and she starts having more sway and control over what happens. She uses her voice more to stand up for herself and allow things to go more in her way. And the way that I see it, I can't help but wonder if perhaps she was filled with fear and anxieties for the bulk of her youth, for obvious reasons, and her magic is primarily transformation based. I can't help but wonder if subconsciously, since she saw only bad things happening in her foreseeable future, if perhaps her magic was somehow working the events to manifest that into reality. I might just be making things up, but it does speak to that aspect of human psychology and positive thinking and having confidence and self-assuredness and self-esteem, and how once you are able to acquire those things, things just kind of fall better into place. It's not necessarily that things fall better into place. It is more so that you are just able to deal with things better because you are able to put yourself into a mindset that kind of shapes your reality, or rather your perception of your reality. So I can't help but wonder if that has something to do with it. I might just be reaching there. But those are just my takeaways from it. This was a phenomenal read. I really enjoyed it. If you love Greek mythology and have never read this before, highly recommend it. It's a joy to revisit these stories just from the perspective of a different character. I'd love to see something like this again, but from another character that's just there. Like, I don't know, have it be the whole stories of Greek mythology just from the view of a random satyr, random mermaid. It's like, what's that siren thinking about all this? I would read the exact same story over and over and over and over again if it was from a different character's perspective each time, because that's just cool. You get in the head of different characters. It's really fascinating. If you are not into Greek mythology, I think that you can still read this. There's also a glossary in the back of the book that gives you the name and description of each of the main characters and side characters throughout the book. So you're able to just kind of do a quick reference, maybe skim through that before you read it if you want to. But again, I think that Madeline does a phenomenal job of making sure that you're up to speed on what's happening and who's who and what's what and who can do what. But hey, let me know in the comments if you have read this book. What do you think about it? What were your big takeaways from it? What did you like? What didn't you like? Drop those comments down below. Let's get that conversation going, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye.